So, Madam Sela, Excellencies, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and a pleasure to be a part of the third annual Social Justice Summit and International Conference on Social Justice, Economic Equality and Peace, which aims to charter a new socio-economic pathway for South Africa and the continent. I have been asked to speak to you on the theme which is both important to Sweden and close to my heart: how Sweden has leveraged the SDGs as a catalyst for advancing social justice, equality and peace. Ladies and gentlemen, just 2 years ago we had not yet heard of COVID-19, and today the world looks very different. Globally, the health crisis evolved into an economic and social crisis. It has had a devastating impact on the global labor market. Millions of people have lost their jobs, and an economic crisis causes suffering all over the world. But we must at the same time remember that even before COVID-19, the world was marked by growing inequality. More than 500,000 people died from violence every year. Half of the world's children and at least a third of women were victims of violence, and more than 5 billion people lacked access to justice. The pandemic has accelerated these trends. And let me state this very clearly. Growing inequality are undermining democracy and is a serious threat to our common future. Inequalities have not only worsened with regards to material well-being and services. Laws, norms and barriers continue to exclude women and marginalized groups from participation and demanding respect for fundamental rights. We see shrinking democratic and civic space in many parts of the world. According to the 2021 World Press Freedom Index released earlier this year, journalism is completely restricted in 73 nations and constrained in 59 others. Those 132 countries represent just over 73% of the 180 nations in the study. The Swedish initiative called Drive for Democracy was launched in 2019, responds directly to our topic of today. It focuses on strengthening civil society, human rights, the rule of law, free and independent media, democratic processes, as well as women's and young people's democratic engagement. It is a fact that social justice, equality, and peace are challenged also in countries that are described and looked upon as democracies. But realizing that those values can never ever exist without democracy. Democracy is not just a word, not just the equal right to vote in free election. Democracy is a way of living, built upon trust, respect for each other, built upon the understanding of the fundamental wisdom that I lose my freedom if you lose yours. Democracy is the glue that brings us together instead of falling apart as humans, as society, as a country. I remember one day when the former Prime Minister of Sweden, Mr. Olof Palme, visited my hometown. The year was 1985. I was just 23 years old at that time. Just a few months before he was assassinated. It was a lunch meeting during a hectic election campaign. I had taken a seat at the front row. He looked very tired walking on stage, but full of energy during his speech. He told us that democracy starts at the daycare center in our smallest village and continues to global action for all humans. He talked about democracy at workplaces, in our hometowns, and the need to defeat the system of apartheid in South Africa. He convinced me and us that the idea of democracy cannot be stopped by any borders or by any power. And when you have accepted the idea of democracy, that idea can and must be implemented in all fields of society. Around the world, authoritarian leaders are gaining ground. Democratic principles are under threat. Elected leaders are weakening their societies because of corruption, placing their own personal interest first instead of the people that have elected them. It is today clearer than ever why we must make peace, justice, and inclusion, democracy, the foundation for the reset and recovery. If we are to build back better, we need to make recovery green and just. The strength of the 2030 agenda and its 17 goals and 169 targets lies in the way that they clearly show how different areas of development influence and interact with each other. To tackle inequality and climate change, we need to join forces in the global community: policymakers, scholars, politicians, business. We are in this together, sharing ideas and expertise. It must be stated that we cannot afford poverty and unemployment. The costs for everyone are too high. Business need customers and well-educated and skilled employees. Inequality is a pathway to poverty. A just and fair society is all about to invest in each other throughout the whole life. A man with a very well-paid job gain nothing from the fact that his neighbor is unemployed. A well-educated woman is not gaining anything if her neighbor has lack of training and skills. The truth is that it's the opposite. Everyone is better off with equality. That insight must be universal and a strategy for every responsible government. The same goes with climate change. We share the planet, the responsibility, and the future. We will win or lose the future together. The Swedish action plan involves everyone: the business sector, trade unions, civil society, researchers, politicians, civil servants at all levels. No one can run or hide away. The work is not done by someone else, somewhere else. It must be done by all of us together. And there are two reasons for this. Firstly, it's morally right. We have a responsibility towards each other, and not just ourselves here and now. We have responsibilities towards people all over the world, but also towards, of course, future generations. Saying that, I will become grandfather for the first time next week. I'm so excited. And I think I'm giving this speech just to encourage my grandson to do better when it comes to sustainable societies. We will welcome him to a sustainable society because we must do that together. There is no alternative. Secondly, it's also economically smart. We can already see countless of Swedish companies developing the new technology and solutions that the world is crying out for to reduce carbon emissions. Countries that are determined being at the forefront of climate ambitions will benefit. We have been able to translate our policy, the Swedish policy, on sustainable development, social justice, equality, into political decisions. We have set clear targets. We have made nationally binding decisions. And we have redirected resources to strengthen a true sustainable society. I am proud to say that South Africa and Sweden shares a strong commitment to multilateral action in addressing global challenges and responding to the demands of our citizens for a greater ambition to build a more just, equitable, peaceful and sustainable future. We need each other in this. Together we are pushing to support and advance multilateralism in service of all countries. And we need to prioritize the building of a resilient and equitable health system for all. Sweden stands ready to act with our partners for people, planet and prosperity. I am convinced that if we all address the SDGs by working together and integrate them into our recovery, we will build stronger, fair, peaceful and resilient societies that will stand ready beyond 2030. And that is my promise to my grandchild that I'm expecting next week. Thank you.